And welcome back to the channel where we talk about only good comics. I'm Brant, and this is Friday First. This is that series where we talk about those brand new #1 issues, new character debuts, new story arcs, and the like. And this is for books that are coming out on October 30th, 2024. So, not a whole lot of first issues that are coming out this week. It's the 5th week, so there's actually not a whole lot of books in general. Some specials, some reprints, things like that. But I managed to cobble together a list of a few firsts and some honorable mentions, and just some stuff mostly that might not be on a lot of people's radar, or wasn't on mine at the very least. But still some interesting stuff, and we'll talk about it and see what's out there, and we'll go with it, right? But before we do get into that, of course, we're going to talk about some recaps from last week, or rather the books that came out this week that were on last week's episode of Friday First. And I've got 4 that I'm going to talk about this week. So before I jump into that, though, I did not get to be on Comic Book Weekly this past week, or this past Tuesday. So I instead recorded a video talking about my top 5 picks from last week. So if you want to go check that out, it went live yesterday. It is on the channel. It's literally titled like top 5 comics for October 16th. So if you want to go check it out, you can check it out on the channel now. So let's get into some of the books that came out this week, new #1s, and whatever. Yeah, I think they all actually are all new #1, except for the first one. Say that, and except for the first one. The first one we're going to talk about is actually Detective Comics issue 1090, I believe it is. This is written by Tom Taylor with art by Mikkel Janin, and it's a brand new story arc, brand new story, new creative team on this book. And I found the concept for this issue interesting enough to check it out. I'm not regularly, or I haven't been regularly reading Detective Comics, but this issue just sounded interesting to me. The art, first of all, before I even get into the story, is phenomenal. It's really good. It's more like it has a bit of a realistic vibe, but still maintains like a soft animated look as well. So it's like this nice contrast between the two. It's really detailed, really clean art, clean lines, clean colors. Just really kind of visually striking, in my opinion. But as far as the story goes, the story was kind of not retconning, but adding to the mythos of Batman's origin, basically. So this story mainly centers around a flashback with Thomas and Martha Wayne, and about a woman that they helped back in the day. She was in an abusive relationship. She was pregnant with a child, and they got into an accident and ended up in the hospital. And it actually was an accident, because they all both the man and the woman got hurt. So they kind of put this woman in hiding. Basically, they helped her find refuge and women's shelters and stuff like that, and helped her raise her child in peace. And the man never knew that the child was born, that kind of thing, all of that. So the way that this feeds into the current storyline, though, is someone is killing young, like, teenagers, kids, and it's become like a serial killer situation. We don't know exactly what's going on, but we know Batman's on the trail. He reconnects with an old friend, which I think ties into the flashback story. Possibly, we'll see how that all plays out. But the interesting thing that this does is it adds to the mythos of Joe Chill, the man that killed Thomas and Martha Wayne. And I don't want to spoil how that comes to be, but I'll just put it like this: it made it kind of added an element of Peter Parker's origin story into Batman's origin, if that makes sense, just because of the actions or inaction of it, kind of both the action and inaction of Thomas Wayne led to Wayne's deaths in a way. So very interesting the way that all came to be. I really enjoyed that, and I didn't mind that addition to the story. It made it less like a random shooting, and it put a little weight behind it. And I know a lot of people probably would prefer it to be like this random act of whatever. But I think it adds a little bit more weight, and it makes for a very interesting story that we're going into going forward, as I assume that this all ties back to that. Otherwise, why do we get a flashback, right? So anyway, really interesting start to this new arc of Detective Comics by Tom Taylor, part of the All In initiative. And it's made me jump back on this book. And I'm definitely curious to see what happens from this point forward. So the next book I'm going to talk about is the next book in the Horizon Experiment series of one-shots. This is The Sacred Damned. This is written by Sabir Pruzada with art by Michael Walsh. And if you're not familiar with the Horizon Experiment, this is the second book, the second one-shot in this series of books, I believe. The first one was an Asian James Bond. This one now is a Muslim John Constantine type character. And it's those kind of things, taking, popular archetypes and characters and throwing in a different background or culture into the mix and seeing how that story plays out. And this one, I felt like this one was stronger than the previous one that I read. But you have to like really be into the supernatural and stuff. And if you're not like a John Constantine fan, or you don't like supernatural stuff, this might not be for you. But this is definitely supernatural horror. And it kind of explores the concept of the jinn or genies as commonly known, but the jinn, and how they play into like Muslim culture and Middle Eastern culture and all of that, and we see the effects of the jinn in modern time, how they affected this football player's life, and very negatively. So I thought it was a really interesting story. Michael Walsh, you might be familiar from The Silver Coin. Sabir Pruzada did a lot of Miss Marvel work, some Moon Knight, Dandelion. So a really strong creative team. Sabir is also a TV writer. That's, again, what this Horizon Experiment is. There's a lot of TV writers doing, experimental stories like this. And I thought this one was pretty strong. I really like the concept behind it. The way it played out, the way it was paced, the way that even the characters that feel like they things are happening to them, you realize that there's more layers to that. That it's not black and white. There's a lot of there's guilt and blame on every side of this, just like in real life. So I think that's a really interesting way to play with this concept. But I don't know, I enjoyed it. I thought it was a pretty decent read if you're into those kind of stories. And I like this mashup, this take on the John Constantine type of character from this different perspective. So and I learned more about again, the jinn in their culture and stuff that I never knew that it was like actually part of like the court system and stuff, and it's used in actual court cases and stuff. He explains it both in story and in a write up at the end. So that was really interesting to me, and I appreciated it. So there you go, The Sacred Damned. Next one we're going to talk about is Iron Man issue 1, brand new kind of a chapter for this book. Legacy 671 is the issue. This is written by Spencer Ackerman with art by Julius Ota. And I wasn't familiar with either one of these. Spencer Ackerman is a former journal, or maybe is a current journalist. I don't know. He's a journalist and has been like, wartime journalist, had traveled all over the place, kind of reporting on hard-hitting news and stuff. And he kind of takes that, a little bit of that, and applies his knowledge in, armaments and all that kind of stuff into this story, which became a very interesting story because throughout the past, few years of Iron Man's, company, his struggles with his company, losing it, gaining it, losing it, gaining it, all that stuff, and different armor wars that we've seen over the many years, kind of play into this as well. So he manages to get back into his company, but at the very beginning of this book, his armor stops working. He falls out of the sky. He's injured gravely in the hospital, all bandaged up, broken leg, all this stuff. And in the meantime, his business continues on, and deals start getting made. Offers are put on the table. They're about to sell the company to not only his rivals, but people that are of nefarious means. We're talking AIM. We're talking Roxxon, and all this stuff. And that's why it leads to the Stark Roxxon war. It's not an armor war, and they make that very clear. This is not an armor war. This is the Stark Roxxon war. So, again, he's up against his own company and people trying to take his technology and make weapons. And that's kind of the classic thing, but it's a very new way, a unique way to approach that concept that we haven't necessarily seen before. And I thought it came together really interestingly. And on top of that, all his armors are basically useless, even the Mysterium armor, which was stolen from him. And so now he's having to go back to basics and kind of build an armor that doesn't rely on any of that stuff anymore. So we're stripping Iron Man down to the very core and building him back up again. And those stories are always interesting. It also references all the things that came before in previous arcs, most recent arcs and everything. So there's a lot to tie into that. If you've been reading Iron Man for a while, you're going to notice all these threads. But if you're picking this up on a whim, trying to jump in, I think it's a pretty decent jump-in story if you know anything about Iron Man. But if you don't know anything about Iron Man and jumping into this, you're like, okay, I've seen him from the movies. Why isn't he in his company? All this stuff. You might be a little bit lost, but I really enjoyed it. I think this could be a really strong run for Iron Man. I'm curious to see how it all plays out. And finally, for the recaps, we have Absolute Wonder Woman issue number 1, then the second book from the Absolute universe that we've seen so far. First, obviously, was Batman, and next will be Superman, I think in 2 weeks. So this one is written by Kelly Thompson with art by Hayden Sherman. And this was these Absolute books are very interesting because, again, they're taking popular concepts, popular characters, and seeing what would happen if they were raised completely differently, which is something that we have seen before, but we've not seen this version of Wonder Woman, which basically all the Amazons were imprisoned. So they were taken off the field, but she was the last Amazon, and she was given to Circe and raised in hell. And so this is Wonder Woman without the mascara, without the Amazons, without all that influence, without her mission of peace to protect, man's world. This was her raised in hell, and now still being able to feel what her purpose is, who she is, and still going out there and trying to protect a world that she owes nothing to, that she has no connection to. There's no Steve Trevor here to at least not so far to kind of pull her into that world at all either. So really interesting take on Wonder Woman, that we see all the kind of the touchstones that make Wonder Woman, but from a very different perspective and a very different motivation. But still, it's a Wonder Woman at the core. But she's, I don't know, it's pretty awesome. It's like, I kind of think it's like, okay, if Big Barda became Wonder Woman kind of thing. Not exactly that, but it's very similar in vibe to me, as that might be. So really good book. So far, these Absolute books have been pretty good. So I'm enjoying them, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with Superman as well. All right, so that is the last recap that I have. So let's get into our list of books that are coming out next week. All right, we're going to kick things off with our first of 3 honorable mentions. The first one being Venom Fantastic Four. If you are a completist, you're getting all the Venom stuff. This is one to pay attention to. I was, and then I started to taper off. Don't know if I'm getting this one or not, but this one is written by Adam Warren with art by Joey Vasquez, and the Fantastic Four tangle with both Kang and Doom in this issue. I don't know if this is a one shot or if it's a miniseries. I don't exactly know. It is 40 pages for $5. But yeah, it's a wild battle of mad geniuses that spans thousands of years and also the space of a breath, with stakes only the Fantastic Four could fathom. So, and all that somehow ties into Venom War. I don't know how, but it sounded interesting. Next one we have is Poison Ivy and Swamp Thing Feral Trees issue 1. Again, I don't know if this is a one-shot or a miniseries. It's a 48-page book for $6. I think it might be a one-shot. I'm not sure, though. This is written by G. Willow Wilson with art by Mike Perkins. So you got a top-notch creative team here. This is DC All In. And I don't know if I'm picking this one up, but it's something that's obviously stemming from the Green and the Parliament of Trees, and they've conscripted Poison Ivy and Swamp Thing together to solve whatever is happening to the Green that is, kind of affecting things. Something horrific is tearing through the Green. It's gnawing through the very fabric of it, and it's I don't know. It uses words like pain, tearing, gnashing, gnawing, things like that. It's visceral, and all this carnage is being left, and only Poison Ivy and Swamp Thing can solve the mystery. So if you're a fan of these characters, or that sounds interesting to you, you might want to check this one out. And our last honorable mention is Come Find Me, an Autumnal Offering issue 1. This is a 56-page one-shot from Distillery by Becky Cloonan and Celine Loop are the writers and art. Actually, Ian Carroll. There's several writers and artists in this, so it's basically an anthology, and they're hinting at this being like an annual kind of thing. Obviously, just in time for Halloween, so it's a collection of a haunting collection that they say is destined to become a Halloween tradition. So various storytellers telling these sinister tales, featuring a corpse with coins laid over their eyes, a thief robbing cadavers, and a sinister curse erupting, chilling tales of a musical demon, different things like that. So if you're into horror books, you are into anthologies, you like these creators, you like what Distillery's putting down, you might want to check this one out. I'm probably not going to get this one just because it's not up my alley. I'm not a huge horror fan, but I definitely wanted to make you aware, especially if you are. All right, moving on, we have the Carlyle School for Kings issue number 1. This is from Dark Horse Comics, and this is written by Nelson Greaves, who I'm not familiar with, and art by David Castelluccio. Art looks pretty decent. This is it calls it an epic fantasy adventure full of revenge, friendship, and betrayal. This is a fantasy medieval school for basically teaching young people all the things that they need to basically, I guess, become knights in the future, training them in matters of heart, strength, and mind, so that somebody will be crowned the next king in 30 years, and then this cycle repeats here. But they want like hope and idealism, but they've invited this girl who is not any of those things, so it's kind of messing up the tradition here and kind of throwing a wrench in the mix. So sounds kind of interesting. Again, I don't know if I'm picking this one up, but it at least caught my attention. So and I'm a fantasy fan, but yeah, I don't know about this one. So I am going to give this one a possibly good, and we'll see if I actually pick it up or not. Like I said, it's not a huge week, so who knows. Next up is an installment of a book that I kind of fell off of. This is Blood Squad 7 Strike File issue 1, kind of again paying homage to those 90s books. And basically this book was supposed to be Youngblood, which is interesting because now there is Youngblood there are Youngblood comics coming back to Image. So anyway, this was supposed to be kind of a Youngblood book, and they turned it into something else, kind of retconned this other team that was very similar into the Image, history and ethos. But like I said, I read a couple issues, kind of fell off of it, but now we're coming back to this with this Strike File. I don't know if it's a one shot or whatever, but it's guest starring Eric Larson, Super Patriot. So if you are a fan of that character, you might want to check this out. This is written by Joe Casey with art by Paul Fry. I really like the concept of Blood Squad 7. Again, it just, for whatever reason, I read so many books that sometimes I have to cut things, and this was one of those that I was just like, I can live without this. But at the same time, I do like the concept that they went for here. And again, if you're a fan of Super Patriot, you might want to check this one out. For me, I'm going to give this one a potentially good. So next up, we have Power Rangers Across the Morphin Grid, issue number 1. This is an anthology book. This is it doesn't say how many pages, but it's $7.99, so I assume it's going to be a pretty hefty book. It calls it Epic Oversized. The interesting thing about this is that this includes stories by like Matt Groom and others, but it also includes stories by people that portrayed Power Rangers, including David Yost, who played the Blue Ranger on Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the first American version of the show. So that's pretty interesting that you see some of these actors come in and write stories of their characters. You have David Yost, J.D. Sutphin, Matt Groom, Megan Camarena, Nakia Baris, Steve Cardenas, Walter Jones. These are all the artists all the writers that are involved, with art by Domo Stanton, who I'm not familiar with, but that cover art looks pretty cool. I really like what Boom has done with the Power Rangers, and I think it's pretty neat when you bring in people that have such a connection to the material to get involved. Oh, it looks like there's also art by Tango, who's the artist on my friend Kat's book, Like Father, Like Daughter. So that's pretty cool. I'm definitely going to check this out now. And you also got art by Paulino I can't pronounce her name. You can see it on the screen there. I really like Paulina's art as well. Patrick Mulholland and Anand Rancharon. So I don't know. It sounds pretty cool to me. So I'm going to check this one out, and I'm going to give it a promisingly good. And hopefully there's some really cool stories in there. For lack of a lot of number 1 issues, I'm including this one in here, Captain America number 14. I have not been reading Captain America, but this seems like a new arc, or at least a new one-off story, something. This is written by J. Michael Straczynski, and we have a revisiting of Thor and Spider-Man in this book, as we have a New Warriors 3, which is Captain America, Thor, and Spider-Man teaming up together to set out on this adventure that will either draw them closer or drive them all insane. So I thought that was at least interesting to point out. If you're a fan of these characters, or you think that would be a fun dynamic, you might want to check it out. For me, again, I have not been reading Captain America, so I'm going to give it a potentially good. It could be a fun book. This is Legacy number 764. Next up, we have a new book from Mad Cave Studios called Hexiles, issue 1. This is written by Cullen Bunn with art by Joe Bocardo. I'm not familiar with Joe's work, but definitely familiar with Cullen Bunn's work. But this is a horror comic. Obviously, Cullen Bunn loves his horror, and it's just the right time of a year for it. Mad Cave's been doing some really great stuff recently. For as long as they've been doing stuff, they've been doing cool stuff. But recently, they've been kind of stepping up their game a little bit. But this is interesting because it involves like one of those things where you have a bunch of random people that are connected by this thing. So in this one, this guy, Jameson Creel, has died, and 6 of his children from 6 different mothers are at the funeral, and they each have this supernatural ability. this infernal power as it describes, but they come at a terrible price. It also involves demonic debtors who have come to collect in the death of this guy. So interesting, kind of horror twist, supernatural powers. It's kind of like this dark, horrific twist on, like superhero powers, right? So that could be interesting. Sounds interesting to me. So I am giving this one a potentially good. And yeah, I might have to pick this one up and try out the first issue at least. We'll see. Next, from Ablaze, we have Parliament of Rooks, issue number 1. This is written and illustrated by Abigail Harding. This is the first time that this story has been in print. It's a gothic horror, and it's Eisner nominated. I think it was like released digitally a year ago or something like that. I don't exactly know the details or where it was released through, but it looked interesting enough. I like stuff when you talk about birds. I mean, I don't know. It seemed interesting. The art looked intriguing here as well. And I'll just read the description here. After waking from a strange dream, architect Darius Ravenscar makes plans to head to the city of Iborvik to show the princess the designs she had commissioned. However, at the masquerade ball, it becomes clear that something is terribly wrong. So, yeah, interesting. And I assume like something goes wrong with the art itself. I don't know what the story actually is here. It just sounded interesting, and the cover was striking enough for me. And again, not a whole lot of books, but I'm going to give this one a potentially good, and we'll see if I pick it up or not. But if it sounds like your thing, definitely check that out. Next, we have Dark Veil, issue number 1 from Space Between Entertainment. This actually releases on November 1st, which is Thursday. This is by Pat Shand, who you may know from Zenoscope, did a lot of stuff there, but also on Kickstarter, very strong presence on Kickstarter, does Cheeky Comics. I summon Cthulhu to fund my Kickstarter, stuff like that. Destiny New York, and various other series. This is the first installment of a new series of books in this. I think it's like dark fantasy and horror. I saw it somewhere in here. Can't find it at the moment, but it's written by Pat Shand, Chris Moses, and Chris Houghton, with art by Patrick Mulholland, colors by James Offerell, and it's diving into all things supernatural. It lists off evil spirits, vampires, other supernatural threats that have been living in secret, and now they are coming to light. It seems that's the case. The only thing that stands between humanity is a young woman, Laura, who has mistakenly tapped into this dark power. She's possessed by this death goddess, and now this evil called the Druid is coming after her. So yeah, there it is. Introduces a brand new line of interconnected dark fantasy and horror comics, beginning with Dark Veil number 1. So this is the first book in this dark horror and fantasy line. So if you're a fan of Pat Shand, if you like connected universes and you like dark fantasy and horror, you might want to check this one out. His books do tend to slant mature. I don't know if this one is or not, but you be aware of that. Dark Veil issue number 1 from Pat Shand. But I'm going to give this one a promisingly good. Pat Shand is a really talented creator. Big fan of his writing style. Don't get to read everything that he puts out, because he puts out a lot of content. But this one sounds more up my alley. I'm a big fan of these kind of stories. So Supernatural is one of my favorite shows of all time, for example. So I'm definitely going to check it out. And again, that's a promisingly good from me. And lastly, keeping with that horror theme, from Image Comics and Ghost Machine, we have It Happened on Hyde Street, Devour, issue number 1. So I think this is a one-shot, and it's obviously spinning out of Hyde Street. We're focusing on this one character, and I think that's pretty cool. If you liked Hyde Street, you'll like this as well, I'm sure. Written by Maytal Zukut. I just totally butcher that. Layla Liez, I don't know how to pronounce these creators' names, but Layla's artwork I am familiar with, and it's really good art. I'm not familiar with the writer though, but I do think it's interesting that we're already kind of pulling, stories out of this Hyde Street kind of thing. It almost feels like it's Hyde Street is like what's the thing I'm thinking of? The Crypt Keeper, Tales from the Crypt, I guess, whatever it was, that kind of thing. And so this is one of those tales that they pulled out of it. So there's this wedding. Lily's trying to lose weight to fit in her wedding dress, and her super thin grandmother keeps disparaging her approach, and all this stuff. So she uses this supplement called Devour that she found from this health guru, but it obviously has a big cost. This is an extra length one-shot nightmare. When it comes to Devour, all you need is one. So there you go. That's if you like those kind of stories that are very Twilight Zone, very Tales from the Crypt, all that kind of stuff, you might want to check this out. For me, I am going to give this one a potentially good. I did enjoy Hyde Street, but it's not my favorite book from Ghost Machine thus far. But, we'll see what happens with this one. All right, so that is all the first issues I have. Like I said, not a whole lot of new books coming out. It's a 5th week. You got a lot of specials and stuff. There was another one that I didn't talk about, which was the Penguin special, because I think it reprints some stuff, and I try to stay away from like reprint stuff, but it might have some new stories in it too. I don't know, but you might check that out. I actually it mentions like the TV show that recently launched or debuted a few weeks ago, and I did actually, when I was away on at a show, I caught an episode of that on cable, and it looked pretty interesting. I actually liked what I saw. I didn't get to watch the whole episode because I realized it was episode 4, and I wanted to go back and eventually watch it from the beginning. But what I saw from like the 20 minutes that I watched really pulled me in. I was like, okay, I gotta go watch this show now. So if you haven't checked out Penguin, you might want to check it out. It seems like a pretty good show. So anyway, throw that out there that there is a Penguin special releasing next week as well. But before I get out of here, I'm going to share 8 other books that are not first that I'm also anticipating. So this week we've got Action Comics 1073. This is the 3rd story of this weekly story, or 2 stories actually that are going on through Action Comics. We've got the lead story by Mark Waid and Clayton Henry, with the backup story by Mariko Tamaki and Skylar Patridge. Obviously, the Supergirl story is the backup story. It's very short in comparison, so we were only getting little glimpses here and there. She's on some kind of mission. First 2 installments were pretty solid. So with the lead story by Mark Waid, we've got, as of last issue, Superman is in the Phantom Zone, comes face to face with the Phantom King, but the Phantom King wasn't who we thought it was. It was Mon-El. So interesting twist to that story, and we'll see where that goes from here, because the cover for 1073 says Mon-El strikes back. So we'll see what happens with that. And then there's The Amazing Spider-Man issue number 60. The reason this is on here, because I've not really loved this arc, but this is the special oversized finale. This is 64 pages for $8. So this is the end of the story. And then we also get the first part of the Deaths of Spider-Man prelude by Joe Kelly. So we're getting the end of this with John Romita Jr. and Ed McGuinness and Zeb Wells as he ends his run on Amazing Spider-Man and making way for the new run that we start with the next issue. So for that, I'm looking forward to seeing what the next stage is going to offer, and also to see where things leave off with Zeb Wells' run. So we'll see what happens. With Redcoat number 7, this is the end of this arc. I thought last issue would be, but this actually is. And it says first adventure concludes. Tragedy hits Simon Pure in a way he's never expected. It's a very emotional tale, apparently. So we've seen a little bit of the emotion here, but Simon Pure is a very sarcastic kind of guy, so you don't get it often. So I'm curious to see what hits him so hard that we're going to get this emotional. Then we have Nightclub 2, issue number 3. Last issue, our boy got duped hard. He made some bad decisions, and now he has created some major problems for himself and his friends. And we're going to see where that goes, because, man, I was like screaming at the dude, like, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it, as I'm reading that. And it's like one of those things where you want to jump through the screen, you want to jump in the page and shake the dude, be like, dude, wake up. But he didn't, and he made the mistake, and now everybody's got to pay for it. Uncanny Valley, issue number 6. I thought this would be the end, maybe, but it seems to be continuing on. We're actually going to learn more of the origins of this cartoon world in this issue and how it ties into the human world. So it says it's a lore expanding issue of prehistoric and biblical proportions. So that's going to be very interesting to see. Maybe we learn how this cartoon world came to be in the first place. Multiverses Collision Detected, issue number 4. The first 3 issues, a lot of fun. Just some fun, goofy stuff, mashing, superheroes with like Bugs Bunny and Scooby-Doo and all this stuff. So I've been enjoying it for what it is. Now we've got Harley Quinn in the mix in this issue, and the Justice League is here. It's just all kinds of craziness going on. On the cover, we've got Bugs Bunny wearing a Batman costume. We got Marvin Martian. We've got Shaggy becoming Superman. I mean, it's craziness. So I love it, and I'm looking forward to seeing some. I'm just looking forward to having more fun with it. Is all it boils down to. Feral issue number 7. This has been good. I think I probably like Stray Dogs a little bit better, but Feral's been really, really solid. Now Lord is missing again. Patch is not doing well. He's been infected, and he's going really bad. Elsie is with a bunch of cats she doesn't know. They're on the run. There's hidden traps everywhere, and now they're in a creepy old shack. So just, fun horror stuff, but from an animal perspective. And then Kill All Immortals, issue number 4. This has been a fun series as well, where we see the Vikings kind of going to war with each other, and we learned last issue, I think it was, that what is her name? The lead character, Frey. It's not just about her boyfriend and protecting him and all this stuff. It goes much deeper than that. It's more personal, and that gave more weight to her character and everything. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this continues to evolve, this story and her story in particular. It says she's trapped by her father in this one, and she faces this ultimate test. She either has to sacrifice her lover's life or get her freedom. So, or to get her freedom, I should say. So we'll see how that plays out, and where her loyalties ultimately lie. Okay, that's all the books that I have to talk about this week. Like I said, not a huge week this week, 5th week, last Friday of October here. I'll see you again in November. By the way, November 1st is Friday, not Thursday. I said it was Thursday earlier, so Darkville releases on Friday, November 1st. But anyway, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe and notification bell so you don't miss any of the episodes of Friday 1st or any of the other content up on this channel. Like, subscribe, share, comment, all that good stuff up at the top. Of course, you can follow me across social media at OnlyGoodComics, or type onlygoodcomics.com in to take you right back to this YouTube channel where we can talk about only good comics. Until next time, thanks for watching. Take care, keep reading those comics, and I'll see you soon.